The 2025 New Orleans Pelicans offseason guide. Ladies and gentlemen, this is NBA on ESPN. Now, I wasn't even going to do this video. I was going to blast right through it, but I have to do it because of this thumbnail. Look at this. This is on the NBA on ESPN page. Okay? There's the video right there. Bob, y'all notice anything? Y'all notice anything about that video? About that thumbnail? Why is Brandon Ingram on the thumbnail? It's absolutely befuddling what ESPN continues to do. It's one thing to have Stephen A. Smith playing solitaire at the finals. It's another thing to have an offseason guide for a team and include Brandon Ingram on the thumbnail. You might as well throw David West on there. You put Peja on there. Have Peja Stojakovic, David West. This is just Brandon Ingram's hanging out in Toronto. I mean, this is crazy. ESPN. This is not like I had to double check and triple check that this wasn't one of those fake ESPN YouTube accounts where half the video is like an ESPN broadcast, but then the other half is like a mukbang or something that happens at the end. This is ESPN. Unfreaking believable.
All right, a happy Wednesday.
Damn.
I guess it's almost evening, 5:30 here on the East Coast. Hopefully everyone is doing great out there. We're going to do an off-season video on the New Orleans Pelicans. I think we have a couple teams left. We have New Orleans, we have Washington. Who else do we have left? Charlotte, I believe, although we did a video last week with the Hornets.com site.
Hey, Bobby, you're doing great so far. 30 seconds in. Let's try and speed it up a little bit, my man.
So let's do a little bit of New Orleans, who made a trade on Tuesday. I was out for a walk when the trade happened, and
yeah, crazy trade. So I tweeted about it. It was with the Pacers trade. It's kind of wild because from the Pacers standpoint, not only is it crazy that they're making a trade at that point, they were facing elimination in the finals, and they make a trade, but they also trade to get their own pick back. And it seems like the only reason you would do that is if you expect your team is not going to be very good. If you're going to make a trade for a draft pick, like if you're like, look, we want to pick, in the 2026 draft, let's go get one. Why would you go get your own? Even if you think you're going to be the same as this year, just kind of a 4 seed, just kind of somewhere in there, just go get a pick that's higher than that. So I think it was kind of a weird trade. But for the Pels, they end up with the 7th pick and the 23rd pick this year. I would assume they're going to package those picks and try and move into the top 5 of the draft.
I know people made fun of me because I had a hood on and I'm bald and the angle wasn't great, but we did a 45-second clip, and New Orleans acquires the 23rd pick in the draft, which was Indiana's. And everyone's like, How do you make trades in the offseason when you're still playing? You are allowed to make trades in the offseason once you are eliminated from the playoffs. If it involves players, you are free to make any trade in the offseason if it's regarding draft compensation, no players, if you are still playing. In the case of Indiana, they're still playing, of course, and they were allowed to trade the 23rd pick in the draft, the draft rights to Mojave King, who they picked in the 2nd round. And Indiana got back their
2026
in 2026.
Yeah, Bobby,
New Orleans now has the 7th pick in the draft, which is their own. Of course, we know what happened tonight at the lottery. We don't need to rehash that. And the 23rd pick in the draft. The pick they traded back to Indiana was the Pacers. It was top 4 protected in 2026. If you're thinking of it from the Pelican standpoint, this Indiana team is going to be good again. The pick probably might be worse than 23rd, could be in the 20s, high 20s, and you're taking a little bit of a gamble. Certainly.
It's a great trade for the Pels. Pels did fine. The Pacers is the one where it's like, why would they do that?
Things could fall, the wheels could fall off, and that pick could be in the teens. I don't think it will be. And now New Orleans under new leadership.
What's going on?
Joe Dumars takes over for David Griffin, and now you go into the draft with 7 and 23. As far as the state of the roster goes, we don't need to rehash the disaster of this past season.
Okay, so DeJounte Murray did an interview recently where he talked about, at the end of the interview, he talked about how he couldn't get on the training tables in New Orleans. He couldn't get time in the gym. He couldn't get time on the court to like shoot around like in the practice facility. And it really shined a light on some like infrastructure issues that are in New Orleans. And I was listening to a Bill Simmons podcast, and Bill made like a 10-second reference to it and said that the Pelicans are understood to be 0 out of 10 when it comes to just operational efficiency and just kind of how the infrastructure of the team is off the court. Like just how they treat players, their facility, their training, all of that. Dumars was brought in to fix that. Bottom line. Dumars is brought in to be to make this a much more professional situation. That is why he is here. That is why he is with the Pelicans. He will have to learn the roster. He will have to learn the other rosters. He's been in the NBA front office for a couple of years. So what we are, and he's made that clear, right? He said, look, I believe in Zion. We're moving forward with Zion. I believe in Willie Green. We're moving forward with Willie Green. Okay, so he's going to keep the roster relatively intact. Hopefully, he fixes some of this operational inefficiency, and then we'll see what happens with the draft. There's rumors that the Saints want to trade up as far as 2. You know how that goes. Rumor season around the draft is it's always fugazi, but that's really Dumars' first big move. When he was hired, the Pels fan base, we were all saying like, okay, well, let's see if he fires Willie. Let's see if he gets rid of Zion. Now that he's passed on those 2, now it's up to the draft.
New Orleans as kind of my wild card team. I said them in New Orleans and them in Memphis. I remember in August on TV buying stock in both, and if you bought stock in both, you probably lost a lot of money.
You're bankrupt.
Here.
You're in wrong.
But I understood the DeJounte Murray trade and why you went out and acquired. That certainly turned out to be a disaster based on.
I mean, Murray got hurt, serious injuries. 2 of them, one in the first game of the season. I was there, watched him, fracture his hand in the last little bit of the game. It was absolutely brutal to watch. But I like DeJounte Murray. Again, I think he had a really tough year on and off the court last year. So hopefully with some of this, like I said, some of the efficiencies boosted. Hopefully he's healthy. He's in a better place. But I like him as a player a lot.
Murray getting hurt and Dyson Daniels turning into an all-world defender.
Greatest player of all time.
And the draft compensation that was sent as part of that deal, that did not work out for you. We had Zion on the court,
yet again, not playing,
injured, and we're going to
really bad year for Zion too. A lot of off the court stuff. Again, he's hurt. More of that. I mean, granted, the team was so bad, like you wonder, are they just kind of, fluffing up the injury report so that he doesn't play? Who knows? But yeah, yet another bad year for Zion. Just in the eyes of the Pels fans, this makes it now 6 in a row.
We're going to go into him for a bit. Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, and the injuries have
everyone had injuries.
Ballooned into a 21-win team who I think when healthy, they're in the mix as far as one of these teams that can compete for a top 6 seed in a really good Western Conference, certainly a playing team.
Yeah.
And we're kind of at a little bit of a crossroads. I think we are at a crossroads as far as where this roster is. And we'll see what happens the night of the draft at 7. They're in a spot, and this is when you talk to teams and you talk to, certainly our group internally, and I think I might have said this before, they're in a spot in that 3 to 8 spot where what you get at 3 could be the same player you get at 7 or 8 here. And it's going to be interesting as far as where New Orleans goes for a team that needs rebounding, wing depth. I think from a defensive standpoint, they're going to need a facilitator. We don't know when DeJounte Murray comes back from that injury. CJ McCollum is going into his last year of his contract. There are some big decisions as far as Jeremiah Fears. For me, the guard from Oklahoma City would be Oklahoma. I said Oklahoma City. Oklahoma would be perfect for this group. You could be looking at Kaman Maluach. I keep on screwing up his name, from Duke, the big center. I know you drafted Yves Missy last year. So there's going to be optionality for New Orleans in the draft, and certainly at 23 as far as what you do there also. As far as the roster, and David Griffin's out, Joe Dumars is in. I like Joe Dumars. Certainly was in the league office and put a championship roster together in Detroit, but that was in 2004.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. Like, a lot of people reference the Detroit thing, and it's like, man, I mean, you're talking about 20 years ago. Like, I don't know if you can really, I don't know how much that's going to help. I mean, it's obvious that he can do it. You know, it's just, was he more plugged into the ins and outs of rosters and teams and whatnot back then? Is he, you know, where's he at now? Like, there's some questions there.
We're in 2025 right now. Things have certainly changed. They brought on Troy Weaver. Willie Green still stays as head coach. Troy goes in certainly in a vice president scouting role here, former Pistons GM. Listen, we can do a 20-minute video, but at the end of the day, a lot of this comes down to Zion.
In the NBA, it's the most, like, there's only one way to do it. The only way you can win is if you have a superstar. And if not just a superstar by name and all that, someone who's playing at that level of a superstar. You just can't win without it. You know, whether it's Milwaukee with Giannis or Denver with Jokic or the Pacers with Halliburton or the Thunder with SGA, the literal MVP. Like, there's only one way to do it in the NBA. And until Zion plays at that level of a superstar or an MVP or whatever, until that happens, the Pelicans are going to keep spinning their wheels. And they're going to keep doing the same song and dance. When the Pels have been in conversation for the 1 seed or in conversation for, a high seed in the West or whatever, it's when Zion is playing at that level. Even if it's for a short stretch. That's it. And going into year 7, which is insane. Like, this experiment with Zion in New Orleans is lasting longer than like Brandon Roy's entire career. I mean, it's nuts. Going into year 7, yet again, it's can the Pels create a roster and an environment that Zion can thrive on and off the court. He's a very specific player, how he plays on the court. Can you build a roster around him that works with that? Like, when there's been problems in the past where it's too congested in the middle. There's no shooting on the outside. It's just a bunch of ISO ball. Like the Ingram, Zion, that whole thing. It was, Zion's going to try and drive. If he can't, Valanciunas is down there. So if Jonas is clogging it up, he's not going to do anything. You're going to kick it out to a bunch of non-shooters and, Najee Marshall and Larry Nance and, whoever's out there, like Dyson Daniels, even, like, no threat on the perimeter. If Zion can't penetrate and gives it to Brandon Ingram, he's going to dribble the air out of the ball, run the shot clock down, and settle for a mid-range jumper, and that's the Pelicans' offense. Got to be better than that.
It really does. And his contract, I would say 99.9% is going to get guaranteed on July 15th. There's $8 million protected right now in it. He has 39.5 of that becomes guaranteed on July 15th. 42.1, 42.2, and then 44.8 in the last 2 years are non-guaranteed. There are metrics in the contract. We're not going to go into a whole video on this as far as becoming guaranteed based on games played. There's a body fat percentage. There's a weight clause in there. He hit the weight clauses and the body fat percentage during this past year. That's why there's roughly $8 million. It comes down to Zion. If Zion's healthy, you got a chance. If he's not healthy, and past history has shown you the likelihood is that he is not going to be healthy. When
he has yet to be healthy. Like, and this is what, as a Pelicans fan, this is what a lot of us have been saying, is that we understand the what ifs. We understand that if he's healthy and this is working, that's working, we understand how good it can be. But every single season, beginning and ending the same way, is getting frustrating. And so for yet another year of us basically being told, well, if we can just kind of put it together and he can stay healthy and this, and this, like, all right, well, we're starting to get a pretty extensive amount of evidence here. Like this is year 7. This isn't like his 3rd year or his 4th year or whatever. So a lot of us are saying, I would rather just try something new and go that route than just keep kind of playing this lottery of can we catch lightning in a bottle? It might happen. Like Zion may go to LA or go to New York or go wherever and have his first big time season and take that next step, whatever. But you put 6 years into it, you gave it the good old college try.
And you play 30 games as he has this past year, and they find out the Zion. He has played in just 46% of the regular season games he's drafted in 2019. 30 games this year. You saw when he played this year, and I was in LA and saw them play the Lakers. I think it was March, and where Zion was incredible. And you saw him a little bit playing de facto point guard, and he could play center for you. But what happens with Zion as far as where he is from a physical standpoint, I do think there gets to a point, and I'm not going to go into all the off-court things, but there is a point where you're basically like, excuse my French, you got to like shit or get off the pot as far as how you were going to build this roster around. And
there has not been a player really in any sport that has been as coddled as Zion and done as little as Zion. From the front office to the executives to the roster to everything, it's just been nothing but excuses for him. It's been nothing but how can we create like security blankets and how can we insulate this and how can we do this? It's just been crazy how much this team has given him and how little they have to show for it.
You trust him as far as how you build your roster around him. And it feels like we go into every season and we're like keeping our fingers crossed that Zion can stay healthy and then New Orleans has a chance. And when he doesn't stay healthy, this team is a lottery team. And we saw the Brandon Ingram trade, and that gave him a little bit of flexibility because you don't have to re-sign Ingram. But a lot of it is on Zion. A lot of it is going to be on the health of Murray, on Herb Jones, who's coming off an injury and is on a great contract. I see everybody writing, you could trade Herb for the 8th pick in the draft. I'm like, Herb's on a great contract and he's an all NBA defender. And then you have Trey Murphy, who's going into that.
So Trey was one of those guys where if Trey took a step, then that would have alleviated a lot of the shooting issues I was talking about, where you have Zion, like over the years, it's just Zion and a bunch of different versions of Dyson Daniels. A bunch of good defenders, a bunch of guys who play hard, can do a little bit of everything, but can't really shoot. Trey was the only guy where it's like, all right, well, he actually is a threat. Like if Zion is bombing down into the paint and dishes it out, Trey is as good as it gets at doing that. So he was kind of the bright part of that offensively. Jordan Hawkins at times is that player. Hawkins is a little bit more of just a straight up, gunslinger, just out there, just jacking up 20 shots if he gets the chance. But you got to give him that. Jordan Hawkins is not afraid to let it rip. But that was a lot of my questions with the roster building, where Zion wants to do one thing, right? He wants to go fast. He wants to play in transition. And that's how the team should be. It should be lightning fast, up and down the court, moving in transition, going to the basket. If it's not there, get it out, shoot threes. That's what it should be. And that's not what Ingram is. Ingram is a much more methodical, slower, drain the shot clock, settle for mid-range. That certainly isn't what Jonas was. That certainly isn't what Larry Nance was. That certainly isn't what Najee Marshall is. That certainly isn't what Dyson Daniels was. That certainly isn't what Herb Jones is. So it was just a whole bunch of the same player as far as the roster. Even C.J. McCollum. It's not really what C.J. is. So the Pels have to pick a lane and go all in on that.
First year of that for I think 112, somewhere around there, the extension. There's blueprints as far as some foundational pieces there. But what are you going to do with C.J. McCollum, who's on an expiring here, if the goal is not to re-sign him to an extension? And I think when you bring in new leadership, you're kind of in this evaluation period with this group, and you've got a bunch of guys on, whether it be Jordan Hawkins or Jose Alvarado, these former first round picks, and then you're going to add 2 more. You're not going to be able to keep everyone. When you keep both picks, and then you have Antonio Reeves and Elfrid Payton and Brandon Boston Jr., who's on, both those guys have team options, and add the 2 picks, you got 15 players on your roster. You're at the limit, or the maximum.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those players aren't going to make it. I mean, a lot of those players are previous regimes and not great anyways. And like I love Jose like a brother, but even Jose, it's like he was part of that great season where him and Larry and like it was Najee, and they were when they went after it against the Suns, and it was just like a magical run. But aside from a few steals where he hides out in the corner, Jose hasn't really lived up to what it was then, and he basically got a contract out of a really fun couple of months and the fans chanting his name after games, and they basically got a contract out of that. So, players like that, with a new regime and moving forward and maybe in a different direction, I think a lot of those players do probably get overshadowed by the young players. I mean, even like Yves Missy was one of our best players, maybe our best player last year. So he's a guy where it's like, hey, we got to get him more minutes. Hey, he needs to be on the floor. We got to move forward with him. And if the draft picks, whoever we end up with in this draft, it's going to be more of the same.
For the regular season, 21 you can carry in the offseason. And where you are financially also is you're $1.8 million below the luxury tax. So basically what that means is that you're $1.8 million below luxury tax. You're 7 and change below the first apron. What that means is that you're probably not bringing back Bruce Brown, or unless you're going to move off some money here. And that's kind of who you are from a roster standpoint. Kelly Olynyk
never saw Lana Rhodes once in the blender.
On an expiring. It's interesting. It's going to be interesting how aggressive Joe Dumars is. And I think you learn a lot when you're away from the league for a little bit. And certainly Joe was involved in the NBA for a bit. And we've got all these different rules, and who he surrounds himself from a support staff is going to be extremely, extremely important. You saw his first big move, which was somewhat aggressive, getting another first round pick, but I'm intrigued as far as where New Orleans goes, because the following year, which is 26-27, McCollum comes off, Olynyk comes off, Zion's got that non-guaranteed contract. There is the flexibility.
There's the flexibility to really pivot and go in a legitimate different direction. And the Zion thing too, like I'm kind of off the trade him bandwagon because his value is so low. You might as well play him. Like the value you're going to get for trading him probably isn't that great. Now, if you luck into, hey, we'll get 5 first round picks and blah, blah, blah. Okay, sure. But I think his trade value is so low that there's really no point.
As far as how to shape your roster, but one or two bad moves in the Western Conference, and you're going to be back in the bottom of the standings trying to get out, and it's going to take you a long time here. When you look at top front office priority, we went over the finances, certainly Zion, but extension candidates to watch is CJ. Hard to see me on an extension. Herb Jones is also extension eligible, which would be interesting. Team needs, health, of course, identity on defense, lowest defensive rebounding percentage this season, gave up the second most points in the paint. That is certainly important. Your draft equity, you've got all your own first. We talked about the pick that went back to Indiana from the recent trade here. You have you will send the least favorable of your own or Milwaukee to Atlanta in 2027. It's top 5 protected. Pelicans have the right to swaps with Milwaukee in 26. It's unbelievable. That's in the Drew Holiday trade, but it worked out certainly for the Bucks. And you've got 4 seconds available to go out. So you're good draft equity standpoint. I think you're probably in the top 11, 12 from that standpoint, but it all comes down to Zion. And I know it's kind of like we're beating beating a horse on this as far as it sounds like a broken record every year here. And I'm interested if this roster stays healthy, what is the upside of this roster? And does
Well, it's twofold. The roster has to stay healthy, but then Zion has to take a step. Again, he has to be playing at the Jalen Brunson, Halliburton, SGA. That's not SGA. He's the MVP, but he's going to be playing at the level of those guys. That's the only way this is going to work. Them just staying healthy and him being, above average, like that gets you into the play-in game. Sweet, cool. But that's just spinning your tires more. Like, in order for us to really take a step and be competing with Minnesota or some of these teams in the West, Minnesota's not even the best team in the West. But to compete with Minnesota and Denver, even the Lakers, the only way you can do that is if Zion is a true top 12, top 15 player. So be healthy and get to that level.
What does the impact of the 7th pick in the draft have to a healthy roster? And what are your optionality if you want to move around a little bit more in the draft here? New Orleans is intriguing for me in a lot of different reasons. And it starts next week with the night of the draft. Hopefully everyone is great. We will do the remaining videos soon. Take care.
Thanks, Bobby. Good stuff. All right. ESPN, get your life together, man. There's too many competitors out there, ESPN. You're embarrassing yourself. All right. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.